10 disturbing cases on Reddit that'll bring chills to your spine. There is nothing more chilling than hearing a true-life scary story from victims, first witnesses, or close witnesses. These extremely disturbing cases were carefully extracted from Reddit. They are very scary and mostly an account of victims or eyewitnesses. Let's dive into the stories. Spoiler alert, number 1 is so scary to be true. Let's begin. Number 10. Demon Room. This is a chilling story of a patient whose case was beyond the understanding of doctors in the hospital. I worked as a forensic nurse in a hospital's lockup unit. We had one older lady who swore she was being haunted and abused by a demon she would call Tiberius. So many crazy things happened while she was on the unit. We'd go into the room, do normal care, leave, and seconds later she'd start screaming bloody murder. We'd run into the room to find her looking like she'd been in a fight with a boxing champ. Bloody lip, black eye, markings all over her body. No one ever saw her doing this stuff to herself. Things would get moved around the room by themselves. At one point, she was in protective restraints because the doctor thought she was hurting herself. There was no way she could have moved or done anything to herself while in these restraints, but new marks would always appear on her. Tray/cart would be across the room. The room was secure, so there was no way someone else was doing this. When we asked her questions, she'd just say, it was Tiberius. After she was discharged, we always had trouble with that room. If there was going to be a rapid response or code, it happened in that room. One night a guard reported lights blinking on and off. It was that room. The next story is undoubtedly one of the insane, rare cases that would challenge anyone who doesn't believe in the existence of ghosts. Number 9. Passion after death. How strong can passion be even after his death? I used to be a security guard at a hospital. One night, while doing my rounds, I went into the surgery wing and was walking down a hallway when I saw a doctor looking at the whiteboard where all the scheduled surgeries are written down. I said, "Hello, doctor," and kept going. The doctor didn't say anything back, just kept studying the whiteboard. When I got back to the security office, I was telling one of the guys that's been there for years about how I greeted this doctor and he didn't say anything back. I asked if that's the asshole they told me to watch out for. I was asked where I saw him, and I said the surgery ward, and he gave me a smirk. He then explained that the surgery ward closes at 9 p.m. and that all patients are moved into the monitoring wards. There should be no one there. He then asked me if this doctor was studying the schedule board. I said yes, and then he told me that I just met Dr. Luisiti. Some years ago, one of the surgeons went up to the helipad and jumped off the building. Seems like he never stopped working though. Indeed, passion never dies, even after death. Number 8. The Evasive Rest Stop. This is one of the stories that is hard to logically process. It unbelievably distorts reality with a bizarre experience that would make you chill. Here's the story. How come we find ourselves here? I was driving across the country with my mom and sister when I was 16 and my sister was 20. It was late, but we were well rested still and alert. We were driving along an interstate and needed gas and a bathroom break. So we stopped at the only rest stop in 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers on a road trip at the gas station, as well as a smart gray car parked at the pump in front of us with 2 young men standing still outside of it. When we got there, everything felt wrong. We'd been on the road for days and seen many rest stops at night and had never been afraid until then. My mom and sister went inside and I stayed in the car. I heard the teenagers say they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work, and they left in a hurry. I was watching the car in front of us, and the 2 men had not moved at all. Not an inch. They weren't talking. They weren't on phones. They were just standing there, still as stone. My sister and mom came running back out to the car, and when they got in, the two men slowly turned to look at us while not moving or pivoting the rest of their bodies. And I swear to fucking shit, we all saw the same thing. They had eyes dark as pitch and empty. Truly empty. Not black, not reflecting any light at all, just a void. We sped out of there and didn't stop until we were in the next city. The worst thing about the entire experience, we couldn't find the place on any map. We knew exactly which spot on the interstate to look at, and we couldn't find it on Google Maps or any paper map we had. We even asked locals about the creepy gas station out on that stretch of road and got only confused looks. We've traveled on that interstate since, and there is no rest stop. This next case is also very disturbing. Number 7. Awaiting death. On February 4, 2021, I was standing in my parents' room talking to my very sick dad at the time. He was dying of stage 4 esophageal cancer. I got the feeling something was behind me. I looked towards the doorway to the living room, and something about 4'6" and fully black was peeking around the corner, with its hands on the door frame. I ran towards it, and it slipped back around the door. When I got outside the doorway, there was nothing. My dad was completely confused when I stepped back inside the room when I told him. People who stayed at my house in my dad's final days claimed to have seen it. My mom saw the figure on multiple occasions in multiple places until he passed away. We haven't seen it since. The next story is insane and very scary. Number 6. The insane ex-nurse cuts up the woman's stomach and removes her fetus. Who can we trust? Advertisement misleads a 7-month pregnant woman to her doom. This happened in a city over from where I live. A woman was convicted of cutting an unborn baby from its mother's womb. The attacker was a former nurse and posted an ad to sell baby clothes. The 7th-month pregnant woman who answered the online ad was beaten and stabbed, and the attacker cut into her uterus and removed the fetus. The whole reason for this attack was that the ex-nurse had been going along with the ruse, saying she was pregnant and her partner believed her. So, after the attack, the ex-nurse's partner came home to take her to a doctor's appointment and saw she was covered in blood. She claimed she miscarried while the stabbed victim was unknowingly in the couple's basement. Not knowing the victim was in the basement, the partner took the attacker and the baby to the hospital, where I believe the baby died. The victim who was cut open was able to call 911 and survive the attack. Even after all of this trauma, the nurse tried to claim that the 7th-month pregnant woman attacked her first, so she fought back in self-defense, was worried she hurt her, and then cut the baby out of the mother to try to save it. It was a super shocking story in that city. I believe the attacker was sentenced to 100 or so years in prison. This pathetic story has brought loads of comments. A woman comments, "Absolutely BS, I agree. Even though I'm not pregnant, she's the reason I never answer any Craigslist ads alone." Made me realize how crazy and unpredictable people can be. Number 5. Night Party Invite. This story is about when you invite the wrong visitors to the party. A party invite turns out to be a death note. A guy I was good friends with had a party one night and called me to invite me over. It was me and my wife's first day off together in a while, and our daughter was 2 years old. I mentioned it to my wife, and my daughter said, "No, don't go, Daddy." Of course, I couldn't resist that, so I stayed home and we had a good night. My friend, however, had the worst night of his life. His party was going well and everything was fine, even though there was a friend of a friend there who no one really knew. Turns out the stranger had been smoking PCP and decided to start killing people. He took a butcher knife and slashed 3 people's throats. My friend's wife threw their kids out of a 2-story window and jumped out herself, took them into the woods, and called the police. All 3 people died. The police found the guy walking down the side of the road, covered in blood and incoherent. He had no idea what he just did. Scary, right? Who would have thought? and advice from his daughter saved his life. The next story would make you wonder what some people could do when they're obsessed with a person. It doesn't always end well. Number 4. Home Alone. This happened in the mid-2000s at Alabama. Best friend's parents were out of town one weekend and she had the house to herself, went about her business having dinner, watching TV, then decided to go to bed. She was lying in her bed with her back to her closet when she heard the door open. She somehow pretended to be asleep. The man who was hiding in the closet walked around her bed to the side she was laying/facing, gently stroked her hair and face, then left. She immediately called her boyfriend to ask him to come over, then called her parents and then the police. Long story short, this man had been getting into their home via a doggy door. They didn't have a dog and didn't bother to secure it, and he'd been living in a tent in the forestry area behind their home for months to creep on her. They found a ton of surveillance footage of her sleeping and pieces of her clothes and stuff. The next story is not that of just obsession, but the extreme expression of mortal wickedness, foolishness, and mental illness. If not, we wouldn't have the story. Number 3. The man sleeps and has sex with corpse, terminally ill children. How on earth will a man find pleasure in sleeping with the dead and terminally ill children? Here was the case of Jimmy Savile. The Jimmy Savile case, hands down. Molested children for decades, but had the police higher upper-ups covering it up because he was a huge star. Some examples that come to mind: had the keys to a hospital for terminally ill kids. He goes on to do what he wants when he wants. Any staff who tried to report it was fired. Once, at least, possibly more, let himself into a morgue, and I'm sure you can imagine what happened. Molested a girl, possibly a niece, at a party at her home. This intriguing story brought more facts from the comments received. Everything about Savile is terrible, but the fact he was raping terminally ill children, possibly even after their deaths, is what upsets me the most. They were already suffering from something no child should ever have to go through, and they were further traumatized by that monster. Then their parents go through the heartbreak of losing their child and later have to grapple with the possibility they were victimized by Savile. Fucking insidious. Number 2. The Body and the Barrel. In the 1960s, a young lady had an affair with her boss, got pregnant. After threatening to tell her boss's wife, she was killed by her boss, who then put her body in an industrial barrel. He hid the barrel in his house for years, and none of the various owners opened it due to the weight. Finally, one guy decided to dispose of it in the 90s, and when he opened it, he saw it contained something. An investigation traced the barrel and girl back to the man who then killed himself before police could come to arrest him after confirming he was the father of the unborn baby via DNA. The lady's mother was in her late 80s when she was told her missing daughter was finally found. She claims that she had been having dreams about her daughter being inside a metal container for years after she had gone missing. A brutal and suspenseful scene when lovers turn haters because of secrecy. The next story is a rare, disturbing case from a first witness account. Number 1. The Risen Dead. Has it ever come across your mind to see a dead man rise again? I'm a psychiatric nurse, and early in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. One of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he couldn't talk, but there were no medical reasons as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life and seemed quite normal back then, except before over 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19. But one night, he vanished. He was declared AWOL, and eventually, he was declared missing and dead. 10 years later, a 7-foot-tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marion Duchenne," not the real name, "and I've been dead for 10 years. Those were the last words he ever spoke. He was covered with dust, and he was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported to be wearing the night he vanished. His social security number had not been used, and he had no identification on his person. However, they were able to identify him, I guess via fingerprints. The family was notified, but they said they had already grieved their lost man and that whomever was claiming to be him simply could not be. They demanded not to be contacted again. Marion paced all day, every day, moving his mouth that looked like talking or muttering, but no sound came out. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open, as if he were laughing heartily, but not even a breath could be heard. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen, periodically throwing his head back in that laughter-mimicking way of his. Various medications were tried, but they did not affect him either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did nothing because Marion would just grin, and unless told to stay put, he'd get up and start pacing again. On my last day at the job, the last thing I saw was Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later I wondered if all along I'd been dealing with the ghost. All these years later, I still don't know. While like you, many find it hard to believe that this man is in his right sense, but no one could explain where he disappeared to for 10 years, reappear with the same clothes, and why he suddenly could not talk vocally again. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. And most importantly, please subscribe and ring the bell. That way you'll be notified every time we upload a new video.